October 17th, 1969, 7 a.m. There's a sharp chill in the air. The streets empty. Many children are at home, fearing to go out and get on the school bus because of a serial killer. They've all seen the news. They all know the threat made just 3 days ago. School children make nice targets. I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out. For the past year, one name has been haunting the minds of every person in the US. The Zodiac. I like killing people because it is so much fun, because man is the most dangerous animal. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise and all the people I have killed will become my slaves. These haunting words are only a small glimpse into the mind of America's most notorious serial killer. A man that claimed over 30 victims. A murderer that toyed with the police, sent them mysterious letters and coded ciphers. A case that had over 2,500 suspects and has remained unsolved for the last 50 years. Night fam, today I want to talk to you about the Zodiac Killer. Many of you may have heard his name because of the movie, but this video will surprise you far beyond that. So if you enjoy watching darker stories after nightfall, subscribe to our channel and let's dive into this investigation. Let's go back all the way to December 20th, 1968. A car drives down the dark road towards Lover's Lane. Inside are two teenagers, madly in love with each other. David Arthur Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. They'd known each other for just a few weeks, but love was blooming between them. The two had hoped for a quiet and private evening. Little did they know that's the last thing they would get. As soon as David's car pulls to a stop next to the road, another car is behind them, following them. Its headlights flash as the driver pulls up. The doors open and out walks a complete stranger in the middle of the night, holding a pistol. He fires shot after shot, riddling the car with bullet holes and shooting David directly in the head. Betty Lou wasn't much luckier. Thinking David was dead, she pushed herself out of the car and tried to make a run for it, but never stood a chance. She was found 10 meters from the car, shot in the back 5 times. The Zodiac Killer had his first victims ever. In the following few days, the local police investigated this just like any other murder. They had no idea this would be a beginning of a vicious cycle that would shock them in the future. It was assumed that, given the area and the teen's age, this was either a drug-related crime, an act of jealousy, or a robbery gone wrong. They even suspected Betty's ex-boyfriend or a couple of local hunters who were known to stalk the area at night, but all of them had an alibi. Nobody suspected this would be the first in a long line of murders of one of the most famous serial killers of all time. 6 months later, a similar scene happened. Another young couple, this time 2 students, Michael McGough and his girlfriend Darlene Ferrin. The two were sitting in a car where they saw a man point his flashlight at them. Thinking he was police, the two pulled out their IDs, only to be met with a barrel of a gun as soon as the man got close to them. He shot them 5 times, then turned around and headed for the car. Michael, however, wasn't dead yet, as the killer heard him moaning out in pain. He turned around and shot both his victims in the chest. Less than an hour later, the local police station received a call from a phone booth just a couple of blocks away. And the voice on the other side was as chilling as it was calm. He said, "I wish to report a double murder. If one of you were to go a mile east on the Columbus Parkway to a public park, you will find the kids in a brown car. They've been shot by a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." However, the police were already aware. Just minutes after the shooting, a couple of kids found Michael and his girlfriend and called 911. Darlene unfortunately did not survive her injuries, but Michael, to a big surprise, did. Later on in the hospital, when regained consciousness and spoke to the police, he was able to recall some details of the man that killed his girlfriend and almost killed him. He said he's about 5'8" or 5'9", stocky build, brown hair. He walks with a limp. Michael's description was the first glimpse anyone got of the murderer. And soon enough, the police would have a haunting name to connect this description. On the morning of August 1st, 1969, 3 newspapers had a chilling front-page cover. It said, "Dear editor, this is the murderer of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl on the 4th of July near the golf course in Vallejo. To prove I killed them, I shall state some facts which only I and the police know." The letter would then go on to state the exact details of the murders: time, place, the number of shots and the caliber of the weapon used. There was no doubt the man behind the letter was behind the murders as well. But there's another part of the letter. Here is part of a cipher. The other 2 parts of this cipher are being mailed to the editors of the Vallejo Times and SF Examiner. I want you to print this cipher on the front page of your paper. The cipher is my identity. If you do not print this cipher by the afternoon of Friday, 1st of August, 69, I will go on a kill rampage. Friday night, I will cruise around all weekend, killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again until I end up with a dozen people over the weekend. This is the cipher. You're looking at it right now. It was a coded message with all sorts of symbols, hiding the true meaning of the letter. Soon in the video you'll know exactly what this cipher means and what the killer spoke with it. Because as he himself said, it was the key to his identity. All the police had to do was solve it. However, they really couldn't. And no one could really blame them for it. This was nonsense game invented and played by a madman with rules that only he was aware of. When the police reached out to the public asking for help and hoping to get a reaction from the killer, he sent yet another letter, and this time he gave them a name. Let's read the letter. "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking. In answer to your asking for more details about the good times I have had in Vallejo, I shall be very happy to supply even more material. By the way, are the police having a good time with the code? If not, tell them to cheer up. When they crack it, they will have it." Below this letter was a symbol, a circle with a cross over it, just like the sights of a rifle. So the Zodiac finally announced himself. He had a name, he had a symbol, and he had the undivided attention of both the public and the police. The game had officially begun. Hiya. Before we go back to the video, if you could please do me a favor and subscribe to After Nightfall right now, I would appreciate it. We are currently at 17,000 subscribers and we want to reach 100K by the end of the year. So if you appreciate what we do and you agree with some of the people who comment that After Nightfall is one of the most underrated channels on YouTube, then help us out, get us up in the algorithm and subscribe right now. Thank you so much. A while later, his encrypted message would be solved by an unlikely pair of sharp and creative amateur investigators. And the contents are chilling. This is exactly what the coded message said. "I hope you are having lots of fun trying to catch me. They are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my new life will be an easy one in paradise. I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise and all the people I have killed will become my slaves." What a crazy letter. After this letter, the Zodiac would become silent again. at least for a few months, until September 27th, when Zodiac would strike again. Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell would be next on his list. Another young couple, another romantic location. They were approached in the dead of night near the Lake Barissa by a man claiming to be an escaped convict. He matched the Zodiac's description perfectly, yet now he had created a costume for himself. His face was covered by a strange black hood, similar to what an executioner would wear, and his black clothes had a singe, white symbol on them, the Zodiac's white crosshair on the chest. "Don't resist, I'm just going to take your car. I won't hurt you," he assured them. All they had to do was to just sit down, tie their hands, and let him pass in peace. It is unclear why the two didn't resist when he tied them up. Perhaps they were too terrified to fight back, or they really did believe he wasn't going to hurt them. But once both of them had been secured, the Zodiac did just that. He brutally stabbed both of them over and over again. After the bodies had been brutalized, he walked up to Brian's car and left a message for the police. The message said, "Vallejo, 12/20/68, 7/4/69, September 27, 69, 6:30, by knife." These are the exact dates and details of his previous murders. The Zodiac wanted everyone to know he was back. He wanted the police to know it was him. And just like before, he rang up the police from a nearby phone booth. This is exactly what he said. "I want to report a murder. No, a double murder. They are 2 miles north of park headquarters. They were in a white Volkswagen Carmen Ghia. I'm the one who did it." His murders might have started as a violent outburst, or could have been written off as just a tragic confrontation. But by now, everyone realized the Zodiac was playing a sick game. He was a sick man, and the police were completely powerless against him. The score wasn't in their favor. The Zodiac was undeniably winning. Both Brian and Cecilia were still alive when they were found, but only Brian would survive the trip to the hospital. 6 victims down, and 2 of them were left alive. The Zodiac was getting sloppy. Or maybe he was becoming bolder. He left 2 victims alive. He didn't care if he finished the job. He just needed to satisfy his sick desire. He tasted what power felt like, what giving in to his darkest desire was like, and he loved it. He wanted more violence, more power, more attention. 2 weeks later, a man matching the Zodiac description would enter a cab in the middle of San Francisco. The driver, Paul Steen, had no idea his newest passenger would be the notorious murderer. Once they reached their destination at Presidio Park, Paul would be shot once in the back of the head. His wallet, keys, and a part of his shirt were taken from the crime scene as a grim trophy for the twisted murderer. Zodiac's 7th victim was the taxi driver. This murder was unlike the rest. The victim wasn't a young couple. It was done in broad daylight, and there weren't any clues to link Paul's death to the Zodiac, until he wouldn't allow his dark act to go unnoticed. That same night, he sent a letter to the press saying, "This is the Zodiac speaking. I am the murderer of the taxi driver last night. To prove this, here is a blood-stained piece of his shirt. I am the same man who did in the people in the North Bay area. The SF police could have caught me last night if they had searched the park properly, instead of holding road races with their motorcycles, seeing who could make the most noise. School children make nice targets. I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning, just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out." Now, the Zodiac never followed up on this planned threat, but he did get what he wanted: attention and credit. In the following few days, the whole area of San Francisco was in absolute panic. People didn't let their children get on the school bus or even go to school at all. And there were talks of stopping school until the police could be sure their children were safe. Over the next couple of years, while there weren't any victims directly connected to the Zodiac Killer, his communication with the police and the newspapers only increased. While reports and connections of murders committed in the area stopped being linked to the Zodiac, the way he wrote his letters, it changed. He was becoming angrier and angrier. He still wanted the attention he got during the height of his, if you can call it this way, career. Let's read another one. And this one's really crazy. This is the Zodiac speaking. I thought you would need a good laugh before you hear the bad news. You won't get the news for a while yet, and I can't do a thing with it. Yes, could you print this new cipher on your front page? I get awfully lonely when I am ignored. So lonely, I could do my thing. Up to the end of October, I have killed 7 people. I have grown rather angry with the police for their telling lies about me. So, I shall change the way they're collecting of slaves. I shall no longer announce to anyone. When I commit my murders, they shall look like routine robberies, killings of anger, and a few fake accidents, etc. The police shall never catch me because I have been too clever for them. What an egotistic, narcissistic, psychopathic man. Through all this, the Zodiac wanted to show everyone how above them he was, how he was smarter than the police, the press, even the FBI. His ciphers became pure nonsense, without any way of really solving them for anyone that wasn't the Zodiac Killer. And when this attention died down, his messages became more insane. He began sending strange, twisted poems, mysterious cards, and drawings. He even hinted that he was working on a bomb somewhere in the area. But none of these threats or messages ever came true. Not that we're truly aware of, at least. He was barking, but he wasn't biting. It became harder and harder for him to hold on to that center of attention, that spotlight he just had a few years prior. After all the cryptic postcards, local maps, and insane coded messages, his final letter arrived on January 27th, 1974, 6 years after the initial murder. It noted his disapproval of the movie The Exorcist, a short poem that he wrote. But it ended with an insanely ominous line. Let's read it again. If I do not see this note in your paper, I will do something nasty, which you know I am capable of. Me, 37, San Francisco Police, 0. 37 is believed to be the final full count of his victims, at least the ones he reported on with this letter. That was it. The final score of his sick, twisted game. 37 for the Zodiac, 0 for the police. Since then, there has been no contact with the Zodiac Killer, nor has he ever been identified. However, as this case has been open for 50 years, over 2,500 people have been suspected of being behind the murders. Now, most of those are either completely false or are theories police and investigators had that connected the Zodiac Killer to other famous murderers at the time. But a few names, exactly 3 names, do really stand out, and I want to talk about them with you right now. Let's take a look at the Zodiac's profile first. We know he was a white male in his late 30s, that he had brown hair and was on the shorter side. He was also obsessed with being at the center of attention, and it seemed he liked to taunt the police and see his letters in the papers more than the actual killings. Now, keeping this in mind, let's discuss the 3 suspects. The first one and most widely accepted suspect is Arthur Leigh Allen. He was a school teacher and a convicted sex offender whose profile and behavior fit closely with the Zodiac. He's got the exact boot type and size, like the traces found in one of the crime scenes. On top of that, he had military training, another trait that is suspected to be the same as the killer, and owned a watch with the exact symbol that the Zodiac adopted, the white crosshair. And to this day, he remains the only suspect publicly announced during the investigation. However, no direct evidence could link him to the Zodiac, and he himself has denied ever being involved in the crimes. The biggest flaw with this theory are the letters. They were written with a lot of errors, misspelled words, and in handwriting that's completely different to Arthur's. And besides, Arthur was a school teacher. It's unlikely that he would write the letter with all the mistakes the Zodiac had. Unless, of course, he was so smart that he could fabricate all these mistakes, including his handwriting. Now, for the second suspect out of 3, we need to talk about Gary Francis Post. He was an Air Force veteran, and in 2021, a group of private investigators connected Gary to the Zodiac. This is for multiple reasons. He had the same scars on his forehead as the Zodiac sketch. He was of similar build and stature, and to top it all off, he was known to be violent, angry, and connected to a local gang. And then also, near one of the later victims believed to be connected to the Zodiac Killer, there was an old military watch with the Zodiac symbol on it, covered in paint. Then we have the last connection. It is that his full name fits in well with the ciphers the Zodiac sent. So this sounds like quite a lot of proof that he's guilty, right? Not really. While there are connections, all of this evidence is circumstantial. It's possible Gary was the Zodiac, yet he himself denied it when people suspected him. The sketch the connection was based on has been disputed and questioned from the very start, so there's a solid chance the scars are just a coincidence. And on top of everything, the FBI and numerous experts have disputed this theory. So now we have 2 out of 3 of the most popular suspects. Let's move to the last one. His name is Earl Van Best Jr. His own son claimed the Zodiac was him. Based on the resemblance to the sketch, partial DNA evidence and fingerprints, his father's own behavior and handwriting matches. However, Van Best was in Europe during the Zodiac's activity, meaning it couldn't be him. So why is the Zodiac so difficult to identify? Well, this happened over 50 years ago. Definitely with all the technology we have today and the evidence collected, we would be able to find out who he was. But unfortunately, it boils down to one thing: sloppy police work, or at least sloppy by today's standards. What you have to remember is that 50 years ago, investigations were way different than they are today. Police at the time had no way of knowing things like DNA samples, fingerprints, and other small clues that could be crucial in identifying the murderer in the future. At the time, all they had were witness reports, sketches, and their own skills of deduction. Then, on top of everything, add in the fact that there has been so much false information, fake accounts, fake letters, and public meddling with this case that finding out what is actually real evidence becomes a case on its own. And finally, let's be honest here, the Zodiac knew exactly what he was doing. It was his whole style, like he was good at it, unfortunately, for the victims and for the world. He intentionally hid his identity. He intentionally planted false evidence to send the police searching in the wrong direction. He wanted to play a game, and so he did. Me, 37, police, 0. Remember? It was a score he was following. There's a good chance the Zodiac's identity will never be truly revealed. And even if it is, by now he's most likely dead. All of the key suspects are, at least. But the thing that will continue decades from now is the dark legend that surrounds him. His name, his symbol, the creepy letters and codes, all of these have become things we associate with serial killers. And the Zodiac was among the first to do it like it, at least on this scale. That's all that remains of him. The dark legend, the enduring mystery, the creepy thoughts of a hooded stranger stalking at night. The only thing left in his wake is the unsolved mystery and the bloody trail he left behind him.